In this lecture, we'll take a look into Parkinson and Huntington's disease and discuss all of the things that you need to know about both of those. So beginning with Parkinson's disease, it is a little bit different than Alzheimer's because this is a disease that affects movement first rather than memory. And so it is a progressive neurodegenerative disorder, and it involves damage to dopaminergic neurons in the basal ganglia, and we'll take a look more closely at that shortly. You're probably familiar with this fairly standard presentation of Parkinson's. We see the tremors, a little bit of shakiness and stiffness, slowed movements that appear to be sort of difficult to start, right? And balance issues also arise. Now, the basal ganglia, to give us some orientation, are a number of nuclei in the subcortical area of the brain. The ones that we're particularly interested in are the substantia nigra and the striatum. It turns out that there's communication between these two regions of the brain that gets broken down in Parkinsonism. So let's take a little bit closer look at the two pathways involved in controlling movements. First of all, we have a direct pathway in which the substantia nigra has dopaminergic neurons that signal the striatum. Dopamine is deposited in the striatum, and then that message is then passed on through the thalamus into the cortical regions of the brain that are appropriate for the desired movements. Now, this is an excitatory pathway where we're acting to increase the level of movement. So I like to use the thalamus as an example, an analogy here. A puppy or a little dog that lives in the thalamus, and he's very excited and stimulated through this substantia nigra striatum pathway with dopamine. So dopamine makes the dog pretty happy. And he could run all over the cortex, but that's not going to go so well. And so we have also an indirect pathway that works through a number of other neurons and nuclei in the basal ganglia, and that acts more like a leash holding the dog in the realm that it should be. So we have a direct pathway that acts to increase movements and an indirect pathway that acts to decrease or fine-tune the movements, and that is the leash. When we consider Parkinson's, Parkinson's, we're looking at this direct pathway and having a problem with increasing the movement. So that's where we see the symptoms of Parkinson's, it being difficult to initiate movement because this nigrostriatal pathway is shut down. And it is shut down due to an accumulation of Lewy bodies. Where have you heard me mention Lewy bodies before? Or maybe you haven't, but if you have, it was in another lecture where we were considering Alzheimer's and different sorts of dementia, not only Alzheimer's, but there was a Lewy body dementia. Now I'm going to speak a little bit more about these Lewy bodies because there's something that you need to understand. And first of all, understand that we don't really know quite how they function, but I'll let you know what we do know. First of all, we do know that these Lewy bodies involve a protein called alpha-synuclein and accumulation of it. So again, clumping of a protein that interferes in signaling and thus a neuron that's no longer sending signals tends to degenerate and eventually will result in neuronal death. And we can see these clusters of proteins interfering with mechanisms of the cell. So when 80% of the neurons in the nigrostriatal pathway have degenerated, signals have become low enough or slow enough that we start seeing this bradykinesia. Bradykinesia is that slowed, hard initiation of movement patterns. And it tends to look fairly rigid, so movements are no longer smooth and coordinated. They're a little bit jerky. That's where we may see the tremors. And the sad thing is with Parkinson's, we also see spreading to other regions of the brain where we start seeing progression into dementia later on in the disease. So Lewy bodies, we know some about. The question is, though, are they a cause of or a result of Parkinson's disease? And it turns out that we are not really too certain about that. The cause of Parkinson's is still fairly much of a mystery. Most cases seem to be idiopathic, which really means we don't know, and they appear to arise spontaneously. 15% or so of cases do have a genetic link. We know that there are some serious environmental factors that are associated with Parkinson's disease. The first, and I think the most controllable that we have, are these pesticide exposures or other chemical exposures. So there's a high correlation between people that are working in the farming industry where pesticides are applied heavily to crops, having a very high incidence of Parkinson's disease. Also, individuals that experience a lot of cleaning chemicals and have inhalation of heavy metals. So all these chemicals affecting the neurons and generation of these Lewy bodies. Also, you've probably heard quite a bit about having history of concussions leading to some dementias as well as Parkinson's disease. And so those are certainly risk factors also. And with Parkinson's, it seems to show up more frequently in males than it does females. So we have a increased gender risk in the case of Parkinson's disease.